Known for its carnival celebrations, passion for football, the Amazon rainforest, and pretty people, Brazil is the 10th largest economy in the world by GDP. The country has tons of natural resources, access to world markets, no big external enemies, the idea of compromise in politics, a clear separation of religion from politics or education, no big racial issues, and an underutilized tourism potential. But despite all these advantages and its humongous economy, the country's GDP per capita, which in simpler words is a measure of how each person is doing, sits below $11,000, which puts it somewhere in the upper middle income category, but far behind the developed nations. Brazil is like that smart kid in class everyone says has so much potential, but isn't living up to it. And the question is, why? If you are a Brazilian, don't forget to write your opinion in the comment section below. The Brazilian economy is not for beginners. It's complicated. The country has seen everything from Portugal's colonial rule to an empire, followed by becoming a republic, all the way to a military dictatorship that ended not a long time ago in 1985. The democratic system is comparatively a new thing in the country. When the new constitution was written, Brazilian congressmen decided to grant several rights to people like universal health care, a generous pension plan, free education, and so on, and made it part of the constitution without considering where the money would come from. There is this idea that Brazilians are inherently conformists. They always adapt and learn to live with their problems instead of fixing them. It probably has some truth in it, but it's also an oversimplification. People have developed a more pragmatic approach to navigating a society that has deep structural challenges. This can make them seem more leaned towards acceptance, but honestly, it's a survival strategy to deal with inequality, corruption, and instability. But this conformity is a deterrent to growth. People often find a gambiarra for most of their problems, which is a Brazilian Portuguese term which translates to somewhat like a hack, but not exactly that, to make things work until it has problems again, because the normal way is taking too long or too expensive. This attitude can be seen in how the economy is run as well. Brazil ranks among the countries with the lowest percentage of imports as a share of its economy. Everything essential, like food, energy, and oil, is produced right at home, making the economy largely self-sufficient without the dire need for imports. It's the same with exports that look huge in numbers, but as a share of its total GDP, they're not so much. So what drives its massive economy? It's the internal consumption. The 7th most populous country relies heavily on spending by its own people and government. Exports are mostly commodity-driven, which makes the country vulnerable to global commodity prices and demand. It lacks strength in value-added exports. Now, back in the 1980s, China started opening up, and by the 2000s, things took off. China's demand for commodities went through the roof, driving prices up and giving Brazil's economy a huge uplift. The commodity price bubble collapsed in 2008. Brazil felt the impact but recovered quickly due to the massive stimulus package launched by China to keep its growth going, which meant tons of infrastructure projects and even more demand for Brazilian commodities. The government, during the good times, took advantage of the increase in commodity prices to share unsustainable benefits and welfare programs. The government spending and the credit boom made the economy skyrocket. But by 2014, the party was over. China started shifting away from infrastructure-led growth, and demand for commodities dropped big time. Prices crashed, and the Brazilian economy started falling off the cliff, also straining the welfare programs. It was a wake-up call for how tied Brazil's fortunes were to global commodity markets and how it is bound to see cycles of booms and busts. Not everyone in Brazil is living in favelas. Rio de Janeiro and some other cities do have favelas, but only over 8% of the population lives in them. That's still over 16 million people, but it's not like these informal settlements are everywhere. Academics and media have created stereotypes about Brazilian favelas and wrongly associated them with crime and poverty. The truth is that favelas represent cultural hotspots, representing creativity, close-knit social connections, and a sense of togetherness. Many favela residents are employed in both formal and informal sectors, contributing significantly to the local economies. For example, Rio de Janeiro's favelas generate an estimated $38.6 billion annually. This is more than some countries' total economies. The Amazon jungle is a vital asset for Brazil, providing resources and livelihoods. It supports industries like mining and agriculture, with exports of products like Brazilian nuts, rubber, and acai berries. The jungle has unlimited potential, but figuring out how to cash in without wrecking the environment, now that's the tricky part. The region also drives ecotourism, attracting visitors to its unique biodiversity and generating millions in revenue. The Amazon also plays a critical role in soaking carbon and regulating rain, which indirectly supports Brazilian agriculture and energy sectors. The Amazon contributes 9% to the country's GDP. Brazilian agriculture is a cornerstone of the economy, employing nearly 10% of the total workforce. With tons of farmland, Brazilian agriculture doesn't just feed the economy, it helps feed the world. Brazil is the king of coffee. The country is both the largest producer and exporter of coffee worldwide, responsible for about 1/3 or 35 to 40% of the total global production. It is a huge part of Brazilian culture and the economy, with millions of people directly or indirectly involved in the industry. Brazil is the beef boss of the world. The country is the second largest producer as well as the biggest exporter of beef in the world, accounting for about 20 to 25% of global beef supply. With a cattle herd that's practically a small army, beef export plays a crucial role in the country's economy and global food supply. And we should call Brazil a soybean champ, as it's one of the country's top moneymakers, producing over 150 million metric tons a year. Brazil is also the world's biggest exporter, grabbing a 60% share of global soybean exports, with China as its #1 customer that uses it for animal feed and oil production. And this list could go on, from being the second largest exporter of iron ore, supplying 30% of the world's oranges and 70% of the global orange juice concentrate, to 20% of the world's total sugar production, and so on. Brazil's auto industry is also an important sector, ranking as the 8th largest vehicle producer in the world. Companies like Fiat, Volkswagen, and GM have factories there, pumping out over 2 million cars a year. It's a major job creator and export earner, plus Brazil's a leader in flex fuel vehicles that run on ethanol or gas. Brazil's aircraft industry is a global standout, led by Embraer, the world's 3rd largest aircraft manufacturer after Boeing and Airbus. Now, all this sounds great and shows the export prowess of the country, but wait a second. Brazil has kept high interest rates for years for various reasons, including inflation control, as well as a risk premium for investors amid economic and political instability. The country also deals with heavy taxes, shaky infrastructure, especially in between the cities, and the overall high cost of doing business. In such an environment, the government steps in to support big companies by offering cheap loans, tax breaks, and even taking stakes in businesses. Some big companies are heavily reliant on the government's incentives, which creates room for corruption and cronyism. Local businesses have a fair point when they complain about the government's excessive meddling. Some industries get tax breaks and special treatment, while others are completely ignored. With the government's unpredictable actions, it's hard to guess who'll be in or out of favor in the coming months. The government's frequent intervention also makes the country less appealing to both local and foreign investors. They are hesitant to invest because they don't know if they will get the same perks as the favored few. Competing against government-backed companies isn't a level playing field to begin with, and who wants to play in a rigged system? This makes the economy seem like a bunch of oligarchies that just do the bare minimum to follow international trade rules to compete globally, all while staying under the watchful eye of the government. It makes the economy less of a free market and more like a state-sponsored capitalism. In such an environment, it's no surprise that new entrepreneurs and mid-level businesses are more likely to leave the country to chase better opportunities, leading to the brain drain. Fresh graduates in particular are less likely to take risks and innovate because they don't have the backing of the government or family wealth to fall back on. And you can't really blame skilled people for leaving. To put this in perspective, let's look at the Big Mac Index, which compares the price of a Big Mac across countries. In Brazil, it costs $4.81, while in the US, it's priced at $5.69. Now, not a huge difference for something under $10. However, when you compare average annual income, the gap is huge. Brazil is around $7,000, while the US tops $66,000. Sure, the cost of living is comparatively low in Brazil, but so is the quality of life. This income disparity drives many Brazilians to seek opportunities elsewhere. Starting a new business in Brazil is not exactly a walk in the park. It's like you are sold the idea of tropical paradise, but everyone is drowning in paperwork. Navigating the red tape could be a national sport, and it can take forever just to get things rolling. Taxes are a nightmare. Rules are super complicated, and they keep changing all the time. Oh, and good luck figuring out all the permits and licenses. It's like a never-ending maze. Brazilian laws and regulations are more complicated than their grammar. These roadblocks make it challenging for anyone to start something new. World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index ranks Brazil 124th in the 190-country list. Taxes are so complicated that a huge portion of the economy goes unreported, and we're not talking about drug trafficking and illegal activities. For example, many households have at least one maid or helper paid under the table, and also services like plumbers, electricians, painters, and so on. The actual economy is much larger than the formally reported one. For decades and centuries, Brazil remained a subject of wealth inequality and poverty. Economists even came up with terms like bilindia to describe it, a society consisting of a tiny Belgium of prosperity in a sea of Indian poverty. Travelers visit a few cities, spot some shiny buildings, and get a polished view of the country. But the reality is, you can find Italian-like streets, Nigerian-like slums, and Nepal-like rural areas, all within Brazil. They say in Brazil, you are either rich or poor, or you're a Brazilianaire. Depending on the monthly income, families are often categorized into class systems as Class A, B, C, D, E, and further divided into B1, B2, C1, C2, and so on. According to Forbes, Brazil ranks 7th globally in terms of billionaire population with 69 billionaires. The city of Sao Paulo has the highest number of helicopters per capita in the world. It's how the rich skip the crazy traffic and zip around the city. It's also a major flex. Owning or using a helicopter is a clear sign of status and wealth in the city. But the rich can't even contemplate the living conditions of the poorest. The poor have no choice except to accept their fate. It's basically the opposite of the American dream, the notion that states anyone has a chance to make it from nothing. Every country on the planet has some corruption, but Brazil has always been in a league of its own. Investigations like Operation Car Wash show how deep it goes. Despite efforts to clean it up, it remains a significant barrier to economic growth and public trust in institutions. According to the 2024 Corruption Perceptions Index, the CPI, Brazil scored 34 out of 100, where 0 is highly corrupt and 100 is the least corrupt, ranking 107th out of 180 countries lists. And here's a tough pill to swallow. Corruption and cheating are not limited to governments and institutions, but all the way down in everyday life. Making fake doctor notes, paying bribes to avoid traffic fines, high infidelity rates, and creating forged documents are a few of many examples. Many Brazilians see consumption as a key indicator of life improvements. A growing middle class with easy access to credit is driving it towards consumeristic culture. Brazilians have been accustomed to buying every bit in installments to make purchases more affordable, especially electronics, fashion, and home goods. Cost perceptions in the country are influenced not by the interest rates charged, but rather by the size of the installments, which explains why mortgages and auto loans are considered the most expensive, even though they have the lowest interest rates. Conversely, credit cards, which carry the highest interest rates, are seen as the least expensive debt option. But all this consumerism is fueling the high household debt, with many Brazilians struggling to repay. It does boost the economy, but it also highlights issues like financial vulnerability and income inequality. The income inequality and economic volatility have fostered a strong culture of bargaining as the consumers are highly price sensitive. Negotiating over prices is common, even in formal retail settings. Businesses understand this and offer discounts and promotions. Just having natural resources and other advantages is not enough. You need human capital. Without investing in its people to create a productive workforce, those resources will almost always end up fueling oligarchy and corruption. Instead of over-reliance on commodities, the country must focus on long-term planning in education, infrastructure, innovation, entrepreneurship, and reducing the bureaucracy. Failing to do so will only make everyone repeat the same old line. Brazil is the country of the future and always will be. We hope that you have enjoyed this video. We'll try to reply to everyone in the comment section. Please like, subscribe, and share to support the channel.